5 minutes, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So, okay. First, I'd like to thank Kareem and for coming out tonight and for the dialogue, and for Yahya and Ijaz Ahmed for setting all this up. For my closing statements, I'd like to indicate that one, something that Kareem pointed out is that if I had been in another country, I would believe something else. This is one, irrelevant, and two, it's called the genetic fallacy. The other is logically, way it says is logically, you cannot prove that Jesus is God. Problem is that's comprehending God from our own perspective, by our own understanding, and not only does that the issue of does God have to have a son? That's not the issue. The issue is, does God want a son? That's the more accurate question. And does he want to be relational? It's about what God wants, not does he need A, B, and C. But back to the topic. One from Kareem indicates that all our early sources are anonymous, and we can never know if this is what Jesus taught. The problem is we have the early church fathers who indicate that the apostles did write down reports, particularly Luke and Matthew and Mark, and Mark is called the Memoirs of Peter, as well as the early epistles, and what else was it? Also, so what we have from the early church fathers, and also basically from our earliest sources, all believe that Jesus is God. And the problem is, to be dismissive of the early sources, then you don't have Jesus at all. That's because when you're talking about historical figures, you have to go by the early sources, and early sources, again, New Covenants, as well as the early church fathers. And basically, you cannot get out of that conundrum, because without any of these sources, we don't have any idea whether Jesus really existed. And also, as for my hadith quote, as for my quoting of the hadith, which Kareem said, I shouldn't really speculate on that because I'm not expert on it or in Arabic. Granted, however, and also stated that it works against me because it's actual corruption. That's not entirely relevant, but the problem is, if the New Testament, if the Bible is not intact at that point in time, that's completely irrelevant. Based on history and also reality, since the early church, as well as believed that Jesus was God, and New Covenant scriptures, which are our earliest sources, indicate that Jesus was divine, as he shared the same nature as Yahweh the Father. It only logically follows that Jesus is God in essence, in sense. That is basically what I stated. And what the Christian position is, we don't believe that Allah came down and ceased being God. That is not what we believe. That's really just a misunderstanding of what Christians believe about God's oneness. We believe that God is one in being, but distinct in persons. And Jesus is the Son of God in the sense that he shares in the same nature as God, is the God bearer, basically Theotetos. He shares the being, the essence of Yahweh, the Father. And got 25 seconds left. I'm just gonna concede right here the rest of my time.
Yeah, Stephen, you can have a further 30 seconds on top of that, because Kareem took about 30 seconds longer in his rebuttal period, so you can have another minute if you want. No? Okay, that's fine. Kareem, if you want to take 5 minutes and finish off the debate.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you, Brother Yahya. Thank you, Brother Steve. Um, Definitely want to, after thanking you, brothers, excuse myself if anything was said that was offensive outside of being beneficial. I tried to make sure that I wouldn't, offend anybody, but only lay out some facts. So hopefully that has been accomplished. As far as my ending, I want to touch on a few things about logically not comprehending God. He said logically, I'm committing. I couldn't recall the exact word that he used, but the gist is that I'm committing a logical fallacy by basically applying logic to understanding God. I think that in reality, we're going to, if we take that as a principle, we're going to contradict ourselves. We were giving logic, and we were expected, and we are expected to use it to know what is right from wrong, to know what is truth. And most importantly, in our life, if we're created, and we can agree as Christians and Muslims, if we're created to worship God, to know him and know our purpose, this cannot be done except through logic. Granted, and it is understood within the both faith that there are things about God that we will not comprehend, and that's okay. However, there are many things that we can understand about him, and our faiths in general are proofs to that. So many different understandings that we have arrived at by using logic, by reading and learning. Secondly, he's mentioned, does God want a son? That's what the real question is. Well, seeing that, just to remind, we did agree that Jesus was a prophet. Now, he mentioned that Christians would extend that a bit. However, we did agree on that. So as far as the Muslim position, and in terms of this debate, we've already established half of it in that. We've agreed on that, and that's good. However, he mentioned God wanting a son, and that really being a question that has to be asked. We're saying that in reality, at least for me and at least for many other people, it is not sufficient enough to believe, to come to a belief that God would want a son by these texts. Because God, according to other people and other faiths, and this is very relevant if you were to reflect on it, people of other faiths believe God wanted to do other things, wanted to inhabit beings such as animals, wanted to inhabit, and see, now you have no logical proof against them. They're just going to say, well, you're saying that God hasn't done this, but what if God wanted to? You see, you can't get away from that. If he wanted to, he can do that. He can inhabit this thing. He can inhabit these cows that we worship for some people in the world. So God wanting a son, I think logically, if we looked at it, again, it all comes back to using our mind, right? We don't even have to bring in these scriptures to really come to some basic understandings, nor is it part of the debate. So, I'm not sure how we got there so many different times. However, if I were to say to you, what if God wanted to remove knowledge from him and make himself, astaghfirullah, I seek refuge and forgiveness from God before I say this. What if God wanted to be stupid? Could he do that? What if God wanted to be ugly? Could he do that? Right? It's a never-ending list that now we can go into, and I'm not sure how you're going to reply to that. You see? Because God wanting a son is God wanting to put upon himself a aib. And a aib in Arabic is like to have a deformation, a defect. Because human beings have children. This is because it points to their own finite nature. It points to how they need these khulafa, these people to take over after them after they die. You see, that's what this whole thing shows. So why would God want to take upon himself that? That's like saying God wanted to be known or wanted to be represented in a way that was not perfect, that was finite. You see, it's like you as a smart man, Steve, wearing a shirt that says, I am an idiot. You may not be that, but you're wearing a shirt that says that. Human beings have children because we're finite, right? That's what it indicates, because we're going to get old and we need their help. These are the benefits. So you say, why can't we ask the question, does God want a son? You see, well, would God want to be defective? Would he want to be finite? Yeah, I mean, we can just go on, and you cannot reply to it. I say, and had I had a very
Time. Well, thank you very much, Stephen. And I thought the debate was very friendly, very cordial, relaxed. I think both of you enjoyed it.